All right, we're continuing in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's explanation and commentary on the discourse of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which was called BATI LGANI. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, of blessed memory. As we said before, he passed away in 1950 on Yud Shvat, which is going to come out this Shabbat. But that's also the day when his grandmother passed away, and he gave out for everyone to learn a mimer, a discourse that he made, which was put into essay form, that he gave years earlier. But he arranged it and he gave it out to the Hasidim that they should learn. And everyone understands that this was his last directions on his whole life's goal, which should be the life's goal of every Jew, to bring Mashiach. Okay, and we've been learning this. We've been learning this in the topics which are involved. And we said, just in a short way, that God, when he created the world, God's presence was here. In other words, you could see clearly that the world is a big miracle, and every instant is an amazing, wonder. Every instant, you could see. But Adam sinned, and as soon as Adam sinned, so God's presence went away. It wasn't so clear that the world is a big miracle. The generations after, they descended even more, until finally things got worse and worse. There was the flood, everything, until Abraham came along. And Abraham came along and he reversed the process, and he went around and advertised to everyone that the world is a creation and God is creating it all the time, and God is creating you and God is creating me for a purpose. And of course, everybody hated Abraham because he was trying to tell everybody to stop being selfish. But nevertheless, he continued his message, and his son continued after Abraham passed away. Yitzchak continued advertising the oneness of God, that this world is an amazing big creation that's being created all the time for a purpose. And his son Yitzchak, Yitzchak's son Yaakov, Jacob, and Jacob had 12 sons. His 12 sons continued it, and they went into exile. They went into exile into Egypt, and they got out and they built a tabernacle. As soon as they built the tabernacle, as that was done by Moses was the number 7. He brought the God's presence back down from what's called the 7th heaven, way far away, which was caused by the sinners, brought it down into this physical world, into the holy temple. And after that, every Jew is a holy temple. And now the Rebbe is trying to tell us how we can activate ourselves as, according to the manufacturer's instructions, namely God, how we can make ourselves work, right? And it's like, you buy a toy for your kids or something. So there's batteries, and then they have to put it together, and you have to do this, and you push this button and that button, right? How to make the computer. So that we are a holy temple, right? The batteries behind it is pure godliness. The Rebbe is trying to explain that to us. That's the batteries. But what do we have to do? So the Rebbe said, okay, yeah, there in the holy temple, there were sacrifices. Sacrifices, you took an animal. Everybody has an animal nature, selfishness, and that you can sacrifice to God. The word for sacrifice does not mean to kill. It means to come close. In the time of the temple, they would kill the animal. It was a commandment. That's how they would do it. It didn't make any sense, but that's what they did. And that's what God wants, which also doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't make any sense why God created the whole world in the first place. So that's what God wants. Nowadays, we don't have to kill the animal. The animal is our ego. We don't have to kill it. What do we have to do to make it come close? The word korban means to come close. How do you come close to God? 2 ways. One way is by thinking about God, contemplating the goodness of God, the closeness of God, the oneness of God. God is creating me. And the other way is that makes a fire from below, and there's a fire from above. Says the Rebbe, but our general attitude has to be one of being crazy. And that's the crazy for God. If you're normal, it's not going to go. It's not going to go. You're not going to bring Mashiach. You're not going to change the world. You're not going to increase the size of 770. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to want the status quo, basically. Maybe to make things a little bit sort of, how do you say, more advertised or something. But basically to leave things the way they are, to increase a little bit maybe, but not to go crazy. Says the Rebbe, you have to go crazy. And that those are the walls of the tabernacle were made of shittim wood, and that's going to change the sheker of the word to kerish. Okay, Now the Rebbe is talking about what's the goal over here? To reveal God in the world. To reveal God in the world. Okay. Now, God is already revealed in the world. Did you know that? No. Well, I also don't know it. Why not? Because the world conceals God. But the fact is that the world concealing God, what does it mean the world conceals God? What, the world is also God. How can the world conceal God? It's like a father, he plays like this, he puts his hands over his mouth. A little kid doesn't know any better. Where's daddy? Where's daddy? The hands are daddy's hands, right? Where's daddy? Oh, daddy's not here. Here's daddy. Here I am, right? And then he does it again. Hey, where's daddy? Here I am. Okay, the kid starts to realize a little bit, so he starts to laugh and he becomes happy. But in the beginning, he doesn't understand what's going on. The same thing is by us. Is God revealed or not? He says, no, God's not revealed. Why not? Because he covers himself over his hands. The hands are God. That's God. God is God is concealing himself. Let's take even a better example, right? Here's daddy. Daddy goes like that. A son looks at him, daddy. Daddy wouldn't look like him like that, right? No, it's not. He's smiling. Oh, that's daddy. Oh, it's not daddy. That's it. God, so to speak, is putting on a different face. So we don't see that that's God. Says the Rebbe, there's 4 aspects involved in here, and the Rebbe talks about 3 of them. There's called God's light, there's called God's life, and called God's power. God's power covers over. God's power seems to be separate from God, that all we feel is the creation. That's all we feel. It's God's power. Then there is God's light. God's light that creates everything. Everything that exists that's God's light. Everything is a big miracle, right? We just don't see it because God's power, so to speak, covers it over. All we see is trees and houses and the sun and the moon, and right. And then there's another thing called God's life. Life, everything is alive. Things being alive, that's also a big miracle. True, a tree has a different life than a cat has, and a cat has a different life than the water does, and the rock. Everything has a different type of life, but life itself is still godliness. It's still so it comes out that light of God, the creative force, and life of God, the force which is enlivening everything, that's God revealed. That doesn't change. But the power of God, that's sort of like God's hands, we can say, that covers over everything. It covers over. We can't see it, and that's the way things are. That's the way things are. So if so, it's covered. Everything is covered. So, what do we want from us? Everything is covered. Says the Rebbe, our job is to reveal it. How are we going to reveal it? Because there's a 4th aspect, and that's called God's names. Here we go. Surah Al-Avim, you have to understand the Yadua that's known, Shachayas Eloki, that the life force of God, Shebinivroim, which is in the creations, Yesh Darga Revis. There's a 4th level. Excuse me. There's a 4th level. In addition to life and light, which is godly, and power of God, which we can't see any godliness, but there's a 4th level, which is called God's name. Ketoret the Baal Shem Tov, like the Baal Shem Tov says, now all these are, this is all God. This is all aspects of God. So it's not like 4 different gods or 4 different, but this is brought in Shar Yichud V'Emunah. It's brought in the Tanya, Shar Yichud V'Emunah. It says that the names of all of the creations in the world, these are the letters of God's speech, Hamishtal Shalot, which come down from the 10 utterances that God created the world with, right? Let there be light, let there be a firmament, let there be, the grasses should grow. And these 10 utterances that God made when he created the world, that these letters which are in those are units of creative energy. And by means of chilufim v'temurot, and by changing these orders of letters around, that is what makes the world. And we just had an example. Kerish, the boards, are also from the word sheker. The Yadu, and it's known also what the Magid says, what the Rava Magid says. What does the Rava Magid say? Who's the Rava Magid? Magid was the pupil of the Baal Shem Tov, and he was the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Magid of Mezrich, he was the teacher of the first Rebbe of Chabad and all these other great rabbis. So He said, "Kol asher yikro lo Adam nefesh chaya hu shemo." It says that God brought God created all the creations, male and female, and man he created alone. Man he did not create in his hosts. Everything else was created in their hosts. 1,000 fish, 1,000 birds, 1,000, and man he created only one. Excuse me. Man he only created one man. So God said, okay, let me bring all the animals in front of man, and maybe we can find a partner for man. So it says that God brought all the animals in front of man, and man called names to the animals. Call it Shekro Adam, everything that what the names that Adam gave from everything, Hushamo, that's its name. Adam, the names that man gave to all these different creations, a call and he brought into every creation there was. So God brought, he said, that's a giraffe. Of course, he spoke in Hebrew, right? That's a giraffe. So he said, Zeh chatul, Zeh kelev, this we can call an ox, etc. This is the life in them. Okay, that's what's going on over here. Adam was not just like a poet with a good memory, right? So God brought this thing that goes meow, meow in front of him. He says, that we'll call Zorkus. And then he brings a dog, and he said, that's what we're going to call Morcus. And God said, okay, let's see if you remember. What is this one? The one that goes meow, meow, that's a Zorkus. This is a Morcus. He just made up names, just made them up, but he had a good memory, right? He just had this poetic sort of feeling. He just called them whatever it was. Says, no, that's not what happened. That's not the. It says that Adam saw the source of the life of these creations, animals, and he called their names according to their source. Oh, so it said, that's just the beginning. Listen, I hope he's according to this, Mavora, we can explain Sham over there, that Magi explains, Mashal Murazal, that the rabbis say, a Kriyat Shemot, that the calling of the names, Shel Adam Rishon, of the first man, of Adam, this indicated Al Gadol Chachmaso, on his tremendous wisdom. Ad Chachmaso, until his wisdom was greater than the angels. How does that work? The fact that man called names to all of the animals is because that man was able, Adam was able to grasp and know the source of every single animal. So he's able to know the source of the animal, every animal, and therefore that was higher than the angels. The angels can't do that. So you ask the question, why can't the angels do it? What's the big problem? Angels are spiritual. The source of everything is spiritual. So the angels know God. They call out to God. What's so great? Adam really impressed. Wow, the angel said, whoa, that I can't do. But it explains over there, Alder says also, also the names of people. People. Shem prati below shem amin. This person is called Shlomo. This is called Reuven. This is called the Levi. The different names that people have of each person. This is the life of the person. When a person is born, so his parents, it says they receive a small prophecy and they give him a name. It says that name is not arbitrary. The life force, which is in each and every creation, all the dogs, all the cats. Similarly, like it says, it says, Ata mechayet kulam. God, you enliven everything. Ata, when it says Ata, you, this is talking about the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph is the first letter, Tuf is the last letter, and Hey are the 5 organs of speech, of God's speech. His lips, his tongue, his palate, his throat, his teeth. There's the 5 organs of speech. And there's some letters can only be made with your lips, some only with your teeth, right? With the throat. That the name of, that's what it means. You, God, with your letters, you enliven everything. This is the name of everything. So also the same thing with people. A person is called Yehuda. This shows on the essence of his life. says the Rebbe, we have to understand. How does it? That doesn't make any sense. How is this figure what it says in the Maimon? This is referred to on life and the life force, not the letters of God. When it says that God enlivens everything, we're saying Ata means God, you enliven everything. We're not talking about the letters and the names of things. And even more, it's not understood when it says that the light and namely the life and the name, these are two opposites. We just finished saying that God, the life of God and the light of God, these are infinite and they're reveal God, but the name doesn't reveal anything. What does the name reveal? There could be 1,000 people called the name Yehuda, right? And the name you call a thing a chatul, a cat. What does it reveal? We'll see. Says these look at first glance as two opposites. The light and life, this is a revelation of God, right? This is the fact that God creates everything, enlivens everything. This is a big miracle, which is not the case. The name of everything, this is concealed, like we're going to learn later on. So what's the importance of God's names? That's what's explained also in Shar Yichud Be'emunah in the Tanya. In the second book of the Tanya, Shar Yichud, the book of unity and faith, over there in the name of the Arizal, that also physical things, rocks, also like stones, also have a soul, and they have life, spiritual life. What does it mean? It says domim mamish, even physical, real, physical, actual physical things, stones. Higam becomes domim. This is also spiritual, physically. Physical, domim, spiritual. What does domim mean? The word domim means silent. Silent. So everything in the world has God's word in it, and rocks also have God's word in it. That's the life, but it's a silent life. It's a silent soul inside of it. Call in Ibrahim, all the creations, because from their essence, hey Marim, they indicate umagalim, and they reveal the life of godliness which is in them. Namely, that the creations themselves, they say, every creation says, sheyesh b'hem chayos eloki, that it's a miracle, that it's being enlivened and created by God. Like it's known, the kol nivra, even rocks, but they say it in a more silent way. They don't move around. You don't see anything openly miraculous about a rock, right? It's not alive, it's dead. It's less godliness, but nevertheless, it's all godliness. The kol nivra, that every creation says, saying something. There's a book which was written, they say it's written by King David, some say it's written by King Solomon, the Shira, the Kodesh Baruch Hu. There's what's called Pirkei Shira. It says over there, every animal and the clouds and the frogs and the sticks and the rivers and then everything has a song that it sings to God. Very interesting. Look at Pirkei Shira. It's written in English also. Pirkei Shira. Of course, it's not as how do you say, interesting in English, but mitzad riba, that everything in the world has its song. But because it's so concealed, there are some creations that they are like domim, silent, mineral, that they don't reveal, they don't say anything about the life of godliness which is in them. And this it says that even physical things, rocks, even creations that don't cry out anything that they're coming from God, they don't cry any miracle. Nevertheless, they all have a life, a soul, and they have spiritual life. Okay, now we're getting around to the names of everything, right? We can explain that the life of all of the creations are the names which are called. A name is something which is concealed. That's why it was so miraculous that Adam knew the names of everything. He knew the spiritual source, which was a higher thing than even the angels, which is not the case, which is not the case in the mimer, which was said by the previous Rebbe. He says over there, the masha nimshach havos, that which is drawn down to enliven and to create and to enliven all the creations. This is just a ray of light specifically. This is revealed. In other words, the light of God indicates on God, but it's a very, very dimmed down light. The light that was revealed of godliness on Mount Sinai was so great that it says that Jewish people, their souls jumped out of their bodies. That was a big light. what's revealed here in a rock and this, that's a very small light, but nevertheless, it still is a miracle. It still is miraculous. That's light. What about names of God? Oh, names, we're going to see in 1 minute. Name is the lowest thing because it doesn't really seem to indicate very much of anything. But on the other hand, we see that the source of a name is even higher than the light. Angels, that's like light and life. And the names reach even to higher than that. So that's why only Adam could know the names. We'll see. Let's see. It brings on this in Agiras HaKodesh that it says that light of God is just a ray of what's called the beam, the original beam. In the Torah, it's called God's speech. God's speech, that's his light. This is in all the creations and all that's Bria and Notzrim and the formations in the world of Yetzirah and Nasir and the physical world. A little ray of godliness there. And this is stressed, the idea of revelation. Shahari Ma Sha'akav. That which this beam of light, which God's speech in Mehave creates everything from something to nothing, even though that this creation is something from nothing, is only in the power of God. And God, his existence is pure existence. It's not really existing in any way we can understand. He creates all existence, but God himself is not a created existence. It's not a limited existence, but nevertheless he creates. But so everything is created from God's light. But nevertheless, God has the ability to articulate this light, to make it, dim it down more and more, but still it's light and it's miraculous. That's what's creating the world. That's what's explained in the Agiras HaKodesh, that this is because that the Kav, this beam of light of God, that's the creative force, it comes, how can it come down so low? Because it comes from what's called the light, infinite light of God, that the light is like its source, namely it's infinite, so it can come down into this world and create all these diverse world. And Mizeh moving, so now it's understood that this ray of godliness, which creates the world, which comes from what's called the Kav, the beam, excuse me, which is in every creation and every formation, enlivens them from nothing to something. This is something like pure godliness. The world exists, right? God also exists, but God's existence is nothing like the world, but the world partakes of God's existence. The fact that it exists is a big miracle. Existence is a miracle. It's a very dimmed down miracle. It's a very, how do you say, not impressive miracle, if you want to call it that way, right? It's a world, but nevertheless, the fact is it's a miracle. That's the light of God. And it continues out that this light and the life of godliness, this shines even into the lowest of lowest levels because it comes down from, the source of it is from Ein Sof, unlimited. Like it says, Esach Shamayim Shamata, if I go to heaven, there you are, said King David. If I go down to hell, there you are. I know the low rock b'shamayim, not only in heaven, in the heavens, they all relate the greatness of God. Elagam ba'oretz, even in the physical world, even b'sha'ol, even in hell, the life force over there is revealed. Kamosha Mamshich, like explains over there, that's light and life. What about names? So it says the life of everything is also, it can also be the light of everything can be expressed through also the life forces and everything that's godly, but it can also be expressed in a name. And the names are the lowest. Lefi, because sheyesh maila b'shem, but there's something better than a name, than a light. Okay, so let's take the example of a person. There could be 10,000 people that are called Yehuda. 10,000 people. And so Yehuda doesn't really show anything special about the person at all, right? Nothing whatsoever about the person. Sometimes a person can forget his name. People forget it. People change their name. The name that was given to a person when he was born, especially, to a certain degree, also if he changes his name, because we say, okay, but let's just say a name that a person is called doesn't seem to show anything on a person. But if you have a crowd, let's say of 1 million people, and you yell out the name Yehuda, everyone with the name Yehuda is going to turn. So on one hand, the name is the lowest, doesn't show any godliness whatsoever. It seems to be just something that a person is just called, right, by his parents. There's nothing special. about a name. But on the other hand, we see that a name reaches the essence of a person. Since that a name is concealed, therefore this whole idea can be revealed by means of the light. And now we'll talk about this, God willing, more tomorrow. What we're going to deal with now is the names of God. And we're here to call out the names by using everything in the word properly. That does what Adam did, that he could reveal the true source of something above the spiritual, above the level of light, above the level of power, a different type of revelation of God. And that's going to be this idea of hosts and the idea of craziness, of holiness, in order to make ourselves into a holy temple, to make the whole world holy, by means of calling the names of God properly, not just by our mouth and saying words, by our actions, our deeds. And we're going to talk about that, God willing, more tomorrow. Now let's go and learn the Yom Yom.